All right, let's dive into one of the most recognizable structures on the entire planet, the Eiffel Tower. But we're going to go way beyond the postcard pictures. We're going to uncover the incredible story of how it was built, the huge controversies it caused, and the scientific genius that literally saved it from being torn down for scrap. So, how did they pull off something that seemed completely impossible?
Let's start with the big problem, right? I want you to just imagine for a second. It's the 1880s. You've got 18,000 individual pieces of iron, and your job is to build the tallest thing anyone has ever seen. Oh, and by the way, you don't have modern welding. You don't have giant electric cranes. You definitely don't have computers. How on earth do you even begin?
Well, the answer starts with this man, Gustave Eiffel. Back in 1884, he and his company took on this absolutely audacious project for the 1889 Paris World's Fair. And you have to understand, this wasn't just about building a tower. It was about making a statement to the entire world that France was at the peak of its industrial power.
To really get why the tower is so amazing, you have to understand the era it came from. This was the height of the industrial age, a time of really bold dreams and even bolder engineering.
See, the whole point of the 1889 exposition was to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. So France needed a centerpiece, something that would just blow everyone's minds. The goal was simple, but at the same time, completely staggering. Build a tower 300 meters high. That's about 1,000 feet.
The material they chose was something called puddled iron. Now, you might be thinking, why not steel? Well, back then, iron was the only material you could get in the massive quantities and consistent quality you'd need for a project this huge. And get this, reinforced concrete, the stuff we build everything with today, hadn't even been invented yet. So this complex, lacy ironwork was pretty much the only way to go that high.
And while the tower has his name all over it, Gustave Eiffel was way more than just a brilliant engineer. He was a master promoter, a really smart businessman, and he put together this incredible team of geniuses to make it all happen.
So yeah, Eiffel was the face of the project, but he was not a one-man show, not even close. The real nuts and bolts of the design, the raw engineering, that came from his top engineers, Maurice Coquelin and Émile Noguier. But it was an architect, Stephen Sowestray, who really gave it that artistic touch. You know, those iconic arches at the bottom? He turned what could have been a harsh industrial skeleton into something the public could actually fall in love with.
Okay, now this part is just fascinating. You see that iconic shape, the way the tower curves as it goes up? You'd think that's just an artistic choice, right? To make it look elegant? Nope. Eiffel himself said that the sweeping curve was all about math. It was precisely calculated to resist the force of the wind. Every single line is there for a reason. It's a masterpiece of physics designed to be incredibly strong.
And this just blows my mind. This shows you the insane level of precision they were working with. On the left, that's one of the original, hand-drawn plans. Every single one of the 18,000 parts was drawn out and calculated by hand, down to 1/10 of a millimeter. And on the right, that's a modern 3D model created using those exact plans. The fact that they line up perfectly, it's just a stunning tribute to the skill of Eiffel's team.
But believe it or not, this marvel of engineering was not universally loved. Actually, as the iron started to climb higher and higher into the Paris sky, it kicked off a furious debate among the city's most famous artists and writers. Right as construction was getting underway, a letter was published, signed by the absolute titans of French culture. We're talking famous writers like Guy de Maupassant and Alexandre Dumas the Younger. They called the tower useless and monstrous, a hateful column of bolted metal. To them, it was this horrible industrial scar on their beautiful city of stone. They absolutely hated it.
But Eiffel's comeback was just perfect. It was so elegant. He argued that the tower's beauty came directly from its strength, from its engineering. He was basically proposing a whole new type of beauty, one where function and strength create their own kind of harmony. For him, the tower was a symbol of science and progress.
So even with all the protests, the Iron Giant just kept climbing, and its construction was a marvel of pure precision and brainpower. This is where we get into some of the most mind-blowing secrets of how they actually built this thing.
2.5 million. That's how many rivets are holding the Eiffel Tower together. Remember that question from the beginning? How do you join it all without welding? This was the answer. Every single connection was made with these small iron pins, and every single one was put in place by hand. So how did they do it? It was this perfectly choreographed four-man ballet, performed hundreds of feet up in the air. You had a heater who cooked the rivet in a forge until it was glowing red hot. He would then toss it to a catcher.
The catcher would grab it in a bucket, shove it into the hole, and then a third guy would hold it in place while the fourth, the riveter, hammered the other end into a smooth head. As that hot rivet cooled down, it shrank, pulling the iron plates together with incredible force, creating a bond just as strong as any weld.
The level of precision they needed was just staggering. The 4 giant legs, each starting from the ground at a 54-degree angle, had to meet up perfectly at the first floor, 57 meters in the air. Their margin of error for everything to line up, less than 1 single millimeter.
So how in the world did they pull that off? With a stroke of pure genius. Inside the foundation of each of the 4 legs, Eiffel's team built in temporary hydraulic jacks. So by manually pumping these jacks, they could lift or lower each massive leg by a tiny, tiny fraction of an inch, nudging them until they met with absolute perfection. It's an incredible feat of micro-adjustment on a truly macro scale.
The whole tower went up in just over 2 years, which was an insane, record-breaking speed. But its story was far from over. In fact, its biggest battle was still to come, the fight for its own survival.
During the World's Fair, the tower was a gigantic success. I mean, 2 million people came to see it. But here's the catch. It was never supposed to be permanent. Eiffel's deal with the city was only for 20 years. The tower was literally scheduled to be torn down in 1910. Eiffel was desperate to save his creation, so he started trying to prove how useful it could be for science. He did experiments with weather, with aerodynamics, but the thing that ultimately saved the tower was a brand new technology, radio. In 1903, the military started using it for long-distance radio tests, and because it was so tall, it was the best antenna in the world. By 1910, its military value was so obvious, it would even help intercept enemy messages in World War I, that the city had no choice but to let it stay. It saved it from the wrecking ball just in the nick of time, transforming it from a fairground ride into a vital piece of technology.
So, that leaves us with this final thought. The Eiffel Tower started its life as this monstrous piece of industrial engineering that many people hated. It was saved from destruction not because of its beauty, but because of its pure practical usefulness. And yet, over time, it became the defining symbol of Paris, an icon of art and romance known all over the world. It really makes you wonder, what if something can be so perfectly engineered, so functionally brilliant, that it actually becomes a timeless work of art?